Thank you so much. I will start off. It is 8:30 p.m. over here in India. So good evening to all of you. Uh, the sun is set over here, and I'm sure setting, very soon over Greece. Thank you so much. This is my second time I'm presenting an abstract over here at the Athens conference. I did so in the previous conference too, which was again on leadership from Indian mythology. And this time it's on digital transformation for a better world. Why? Because the world has changed so much in the past 2 years, and a lot of that change is being driven by the transformation that we do digitally. Over the next 15 to 20 minutes, we'll try to explore how this has actually changed the world that we are living in and how it's going to further influence as we move forward. Give me a second. Let me just get my systems in place. The world has seen a tremendous change in the past 30 years. Underdeveloped economies have now moved and evolved to becoming developing economies. You've seen the rise of the global south, country which are, normally, seen as weak economically, politically, be it in Asia, be it in Southeast Asia, be it Latin America. And of course, what Goldman Sachs called BRICS about a decade and a half ago, which was Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. Well, I don't know about the Russia part, but of course, the rest, the BRICS is still around. So you see, these have become primary drivers of global economic growth. And we see more countries joining this. For example, Nigeria, Indonesia should be able to join this block of growing countries, maybe even Saudi Arabia, to be very honest, in the next decade or so. Very important for us to remember is 52% of the world's population is below 30 years, which means now the majority of the world's population was born after the Cold War, after 1990. Ironically, of course, history has a way of repeating itself, and we may be going back to a new Cold War, but then that is how history is. We've seen a rapid increase in telecom technology and internet usage. To give you a small, again, example of growth, if you see India as a country today, it stands at a 10.5 trillion US dollar, strength by way of purchasing power parity, and now it's actually 3.5 trillion US dollars by name of its GNP, which actually helps it become the fifth largest economy in the world. A month and a half ago, we crossed the United Kingdom as the world's fifth largest economy, and that is driving a profound difference in how you transform our lives and our economies in the world. So what are the aspects of digital transformation? You've got communications, mobile and internet penetration on one side, artificial intelligence and machine learning on the other, blockchain, cryptocurrency, well, cryptocurrency is not too popular right now with the FTX issue, but yes, it's still happening, non-fungible tokens. Digital transformation can be an enabler, it can be a catalyst, it can be a disruptor, it can be a creator. It is how we use it. It has to have a positive influence on unit economics. Those of us who are from a venture capital or private equity background will know that unit economics is defined as either the cost of acquiring a new customer should go down, or the revenue cycle coming in from that existing customer should go up. Of course, if both of it happens, great. But we also need to see digital transformation slowly evolving from just helping in reduction of costs of delivery towards value addition in the long term. That's very, very important. What's the need? We have a huge and extremely fast growing global population. We have varied geography and accessibility. What I mean by this is the accessibility to technology and to services and to goods and to healthcare is very different in a large city like Athens or Rome or Italy or Mumbai as someone who is maybe in a more remote location, as maybe the Sahara Desert, for example, in North Africa or the Himalayas. So this is something which needs to be actually changing. We have an increasingly digital savvy population. Now, for all of us over here, I'm assuming most of us are in the right or the wrong side of 30, the way you look at it. All right. We do know how to use computers. We do know how to use technology, but that's an additional skill to us. For the new generations, and by that I mean Generation Z, and I mean, of course, Generation A, Alpha. Generation Alpha is those who are born after 2012. For them, digital skills are cognitive. They're an extension, like you and I talk, breathe, read. That's how they use digital skills. So it's very digital savvy as a population. Creating a cost-effective system for delivery of products and services. That's a need. And of course, very important. And when I started this, there's this project, I never thought it would be more important than what's become now, of course, is a competition for geo-economic growth and geopolitical power. What I mean by that, of course, when you look at geo-economic growth, you have China on one side and the United States on the other side. When you're looking at geopolitics, You all are in Russia. I don't have to tell you, you have Russia on one side and the rest of Europe on the other. All of this is coming together and making this so much more important from a need perspective. What are the challenges we are facing in today's world? You're looking at digital infrastructure. There's a problem with access and availability. There are very, very high capital costs. Remember, all digital technology is driven by an underlying technology of communications and telecommunications. That requires investments worth billions and billions, if not trillions of dollars or euros. There are always entrenched interests and corruption. One of the biggest strengths of digital transformation is it smoothens out processes, cuts out middlemen, cuts out middle players. So you have bureaucracies, you have middlemen, you have entrenched interests who always do not want this because it will actually cut them out of the entire power loop which is there. There can be inequality across economy, regions, and of course, in other stuff also, because obviously it depends on policies and population. So for example, the sad truth is even now, while we want it, parts of Africa will not be as digitally connected as parts of Europe or North America. As of now, the focus is on cost-effective services. That has to change to become products, very important, lifestyle solutions. And of course, as they say, all good technology and all good economic policies are in the end subservient to policies and decisions from the electoral cycles. So the biggest problem is if you are in a democratic governmental setup, you have electoral cycles every 4 years, 5 or 6 years. So can we have long-term policies and decisions, or are they going to be always just 5 to 6 year long decisions, which would affect the efficacy of transformation in the long term? So the areas of transformation that we see happening in today's world is a finance, in fintech, we've seen that happening. The COVID crisis has really boosted something in education or edtech, where people started taking classes globally. For example, I teach universities across the world, be it in Brazil, be it in Greece, be it in Canada, and we did this all from our own homes. Health tech again has become very, very important because you have had an issue of accessing basic healthcare because of the pandemic. So now you have remote healthcare coming into play, which is diagnostic in nature also and prognostic in nature also. E-commerce and online marketplaces were already here with Amazon, eBay, but that's become even better. So for example, let me give you an example. In India, we have something called micro retail happening right now and micro logistics happening, where if I order a good or service from my house right now in Bombay, I get it delivered to me within 10 minutes, whatever I want to order. Now that kind of localized retail and localized e-commerce is now becoming very revolutionary. It's happening in the US also, and we see that actually growing everywhere. Travel, mobility, and logistics are back. And very, very importantly, sustainability and environment. I think ESG has become very, very important. I happen to head a few task forces on ESG and sustainable finance across the world. And green tech, which is environmental technology, is becoming very, very important from a transformation perspective. So let's move forward and let's see a few examples of how this is actually happening as part of my research. Transforming agriculture. Now, what you see over here right now is typically how traditional agriculture happens in India and most of what we used to call the third world or the global south. It's technology at its most basic, right? I mean, it's almost a 2000. It's a farmer with cows and with plows, right? So how can you transform this digitally? So let me share an example with you, which is happening in India right now. All right, and this is called the Rural Digitalization Initiative by a company called ITC. Ironically, ITC stands for the Indian Tobacco Company, which is a subsidiary of British American Tobacco. And in the year 2000, about 22 years ago, they started something called e-Chopal, which basically works out if you convert it into an e-shop for villages. They created satellite-linked terminals, which are serving farmers in villages for crop information, for rain information, for pricing, for fertilizers, etc. What they're also doing is they're actually helping them actually sell their products directly to the end customers, which are the mill owners, etc., rather than having middlemen and storage and wholesalers. Each terminal serves around 600 farmers, all right, which works out to approximately, more than 10 villages in a 5-kilometer radius. This has helped rise in yields, in productivity, in quality, because now they can even access information. They can get proper pricing for seeds and fertilizers. By the year 2020, when we did this last survey, there were 6,100 e-Chopals in taking in account 35,000 villages and 4 million farmers. Now, please note, from a thumb-based calculation, each farmer himself is responsible for the rural economy of at least another 10 people who stay in villages. So essentially, this initiative with 6,000 terminals is influencing positively the lifestyle for around 40 million rural Indians. This, if you know, and that's phenomenal. It's just technology. So that's something so basic, and sometimes we assume these things for granted, but this can actually change the way people are even farming. And now we hope to see this kind of a basic need and technology will now be expanded to Africa, parts of Latin America, Southeast Asia, so on and so forth. My next example is transforming small retail. This is typically, how you have what we call a greengrocer or a corner shop in India, all right? As you can see, very, very small inventory. But what you see very interestingly, and this is something called Paytm, which is an e-wallet. Imagine this is a small retail shop. His ticket size of his average transaction value is between $1 to $2 per transaction. He will accumulatedly do maybe $100 worth of transactions in a day, not more than that. He has limited inventory, so he has to go back to the wholesaler, back up the retail chain, and actually be able to buy more inventory every single day. Yet, he believes, and the entire backward supply chain believes in digital currency by this payment. And that's really revolutionizing how you see actually a lot of this happening in older countries, in South countries. So fintech in developing countries is very important. You're seeing Africa, Asia, Latin America, all very unbanked, underbanked. All right. You have major issues with transfer of money and capital because your population is underbanked. 70% of the economy in India was cash driven before the digital revolution, 70%. Now it's really gone down to less than 50%. Paytm, Google Pay, UPI are revolutionizing financial transactions. And of course, now we have blockchain-based and financial token-based transactions also happening. Microfinance institutions are very important. So remember, you have a lot of underbanked people who need credit, who need loan, but they're not loanable because they don't have a credit history at all. That's where microfinance institutions are coming in and helping with direct credit to users into their accounts. Having said that, there's still issues with regulatory and political and policy concerns, and we hope those can be addressed in the years to come. Transforming education. I won't get too much into this. We all know this. We've seen our own children, we've seen our own family members moving from classrooms like this to actually sitting at home for 2 years and learning everything on the computer. A lot of us are professors. We did that with our students. Now, of course, it may not have been 100% efficient, but definitely it's transformed the way you can actually get people together. I know for a fact I've seen students coming together from across the world together and creating joint projects and joint activities with people they would have never met before because of the way we're transforming the technology. And it's given rise to billionaires. For example, in India, you have a company called Byju's now, which is now worth $22 billion, all on the back of actually being able to give online classes to students. We now have about 6 or 7 unicorns in India, that is companies or startups which are valued more than $1 billion, and each one of them has done this through transforming education. Of course, when you have a population in which more than 750 million people are below the age of 25, transforming education from a digitally perspective becomes a big sense. Absolutely. Moving on, the rise of 5G. As I said, all digital transformation has to have a technological underbase, which is telecom. We're seeing the launch of 5G mobile networks happening globally. You're seeing better bandwidth, which means better business, means better economies, massive infrastructure development, $1.92 trillion, and rise to big companies in their own worth, like Huawei, which are technology companies for infrastructure with more than $53 billion and growing. You see a hybrid digital transformation happening, what we call phygital, where you have physical and digital coming together and transforming economies, because of course, once COVID has opened up, we've seen some part of physical come back. But we're also seeing supply chain integration and diversification. Integration because you need to be having things more immediate. Diversification because unfortunately the COVID experience has showed us, you cannot depend on only one country for all of your logistic needs, as happened with China. So we're seeing the diversification also happening. I want to give you an example of how it works. This is a company called DanQ, based out of the US and Africa. They are using blockchain technology to make sure that the things that you source are ethically sourced. So, for example, this lady you see, she's representative of a cocoa farm worker in Ghana. In Ghana, a lot of people who work on cocoa farms. Bank uses blockchain as a service to make sure that you have economic identities and you can make sure that every single cocoa bean coming into your chain from an agricultural perspective has been ethically sourced without exploiting the workers and the people. That is ESG, that is technology, that is sustainability being transformed. Another very interesting example of this would be a company called Alloy Tech or Alloy Now, which is based in Nepal and Asia. A disclosure, I sit on the board of advisors for Alloy, so I may be a bit, biased towards them. They are using, again, financial tokens and blockchain to make sure you give last mile financial credit to people who normally would be unbankable. How do they do this? They do this by working with non-banking financial corporations, and they actually use digital tokens to give them small loans only to women entrepreneurs. Now, Nepal, as you know, is a very, very economically backward country, and this actually helps those women. And they can do two things. Either they can get into agriculture, or they can actually go into green tech by actually purchasing an electrical vehicle. So you're covering financial technology, you're covering agri-tech, you're covering green technology, you're covering gender empowerment, and you're doing all of that through technology. That is the sheer power. It's not about all the glitz and glamour that we see. It is basics, roots, which is transforming the world where we are in, which is very, very important if we want to make it a better place. The COVID crisis has boosted digital transformation. It's pushed all sectors to embrace digitalization in a way that we never thought before. As I said before, sectors like edtech, sectors like fintech have come up. Food tech has been boosted, for example. Sectors like mobility and hospitality were adversely affected, but now we're seeing them bounce back. You've seen increased capital investment in new technologies. And of course, human beings have become far more digital savvy. I think all of us can, say that because of COVID, because of the pandemics and lockdowns, we actually know how to use technology. Look what we're doing right now. I remember the first Athens conference, its first format was supposed to be a physical event in Athens. And now this is the second iteration, and we're doing this completely digitally. And that tells you how much the world has come forward in the past 2.5 years. The future of digital earth, you will see the rise of AI and analytics on one side. We're going to see the increase of blockchain in finance. We're going to see remote operations through machine learning, and of course, the Internet of Things, which is already there, and drone technology. You're going to see more and more of your packages delivered to you by drone. You're going to see remote agriculture happening by drones. You're going to see spraying of fertilizer happening by drones. There will also be an increased digital divide of inequality and illiteracy. So if you cannot access digital technology, if you are illiterate, if you don't know how to use digital technology, there will be a big inequality coming up. There will be an increase in capital expenditure on digital transformation infrastructure, but you will have lower service costs. The big question, of course, still again is what role will governments and policymakers play in this surely change which is coming up in the world? On that note, I think within our time, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure talking to all of you. I think I do have another 3 minutes on my slot or 2 minutes. So if any, I can answer any question. And if with your respect, there is one question if I may ask her, and it's been asked by Anthony, which is digital transformation. We must live with it, but are we at the beginning or are we at halfway? My answer to you, sir, absolutely clearly is very clear. We are just at the beginning. We have not even touched we've not even scratched the surface how far this is going to go and how profoundly it's going to change the life of you and I on one side, but more so of the generation after us. I mean, we won't recognize the world as we realize, and I think that's a good thing. As long as it is used to make the world a better place, we're going to have, as the previous speaker said, we're going to have 10 billion people on this planet by 2050. If we don't use technology, we don't stand a chance. The Malthusian theory will come true. We have to do that. On that note, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure being over here.